The moment their eyes met across the crowded restaurant, Marcus knew he'd made a terrible mistake. He wasn't supposed to be the one falling in love tonight, he was just standing in for his friend. But as he watched her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, her second-hand dress somehow more elegant than the designer outfit surrounding them, something shifted in his carefully ordered world. This wasn't in his 5-year plan. Single fathers who ran Fortune 500 companies didn't fall in love at first sight with waitresses who couldn't afford proper shoes. Yet here he was, his heart thundering in his chest like it hadn't done since before his wife's death 7 years ago. And he hadn't even learned her name. Emma clutched her worn purse tighter as she approached the table, immediately recognizing the man sitting there wasn't her blind date. The restaurant host had pointed him out, "Table 15, he'd said, but this couldn't be right. The man before her exuded wealth and power in his tailored suit, checking his watch that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Her roommate had set her up with a nice guy from accounting, not whatever corporate titan this was. She should turn around now, save herself the humiliation. But something in his eyes when he looked up, a flash of recognition, of wonder, made her feet stay rooted to the spot. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. "I think there's been a mistake." Marcus stood immediately, towering over her petite frame. "Are you Charlotte's friend? Emma?" She nodded, confusion evident on her face. "Then there's no mistake. I'm Marcus. I'm filling in for David tonight. He had a family emergency." The lie slipped out easily. His friend had simply gotten cold feet about the blind date, and Marcus had reluctantly agreed to explain the situation to the woman in person rather than leave her waiting alone. What he hadn't expected was for Emma to be so breathtakingly beautiful in her simple dress, with no makeup beyond a touch of mascara and lips that needed no enhancement. He hadn't expected the intelligence shining in her eyes or the quiet dignity in her posture despite her obvious nervousness. "Oh," Emma said, sliding into the seat he pulled out for her. "I hope everything's okay with David's family." Marcus nodded, already feeling guilty about the deception. "Let's just enjoy dinner, shall we? No pressure, no expectations." Little did either know that this accidental meeting would change both their lives forever. Emma worked 3 jobs to make ends meet, waitressing in the mornings, administrative work in the afternoons, and online tutoring at night. Her dream of finishing her education had been derailed when her mother fell ill 3 years ago, requiring expensive treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Now, at 28, she lived in a tiny apartment with a roommate, sending half her earnings to her mother in the small town she'd left behind. Marcus had everything money could buy, but his mansion felt empty save for the weekends when his 10-year-old daughter Lily stayed with him. After losing his wife to cancer, he'd thrown himself into building his company into an empire, becoming the youngest CEO on the Fortune 500 list. But success had only amplified his loneliness. As they talked through dinner, the gap between their worlds seemed simultaneously vast and insignificant. Emma spoke passionately about her students, the struggling kids she tutored in math and science. Marcus found himself captivated by her genuine care for others, so different from the calculated networking he was accustomed to. "You must think I'm crazy," Emma said after sharing her dream of opening a free learning center for underprivileged children. "Someone who can barely pay rent wanting to start a nonprofit." Marcus leaned forward. "I think you're remarkable. Most people in your situation would only be thinking about themselves." Emma's cheeks flushed. "Well, we don't all have the luxury of being selfish, do we?" The slight edge in her voice caught him off guard. "I didn't mean." "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was unfair. It's just, this place." She gestured around the exclusive restaurant. "The appetizer costs more than I make in 3 hours of work. It's a different world." Marcus studied her face, seeing not resentment but a simple acknowledgement of reality. "Would you prefer to go somewhere else?" To his surprise, she laughed, a genuine, musical sound that made heads turn. "Absolutely not. I've been saving up for a nice meal for months. Charlotte just accelerated my timeline. I'm going to enjoy every overpriced bite. Her honesty was refreshing. By dessert, Marcus had learned more about Emma's struggles and triumphs than he'd shared with anyone in years. She spoke without self-pity about growing up in poverty, about putting her dreams on hold to care for her mother, about the small joys she found in her hectic life. What Marcus didn't tell her was his real identity. He'd introduced himself only as Marcus who works in finance, letting her assume he was a mid-level executive like David. The lie of omission weighed on him, but he selfishly wanted a few hours where someone saw him as just a man, not a powerful CEO whose net worth made headlines. When the check came, Emma reached for her purse, and Marcus felt a pang watching her determined dignity. "Please," he said softly. "Let me get this." "We should split it," she insisted. "I don't expect. I invited you to stay," he reminded her. "And I'd like to see you again. Properly this time, not as a stand-in." Emma's eyes widened. "You would?" "If you'd be interested," he added quickly. She studied him for a long moment. "I don't think we live in the same world, Marcus. Maybe it's time our worlds collided then." The smile that spread across her face was worth every billion in his bank account. Their second date was at a small cafe near her apartment. Marcus dressed down in jeans and a simple button-up, leaving his driver blocks away. Emma arrived in the same dress she'd worn to the restaurant, and his heart ached realizing it might be her only nice outfit. Over the next few weeks, they created their own world between their disparate realities. Marcus found himself laughing more than he had in years. Emma challenged his perspectives, never impressed by the small displays of wealth he couldn't entirely hide. When he mentioned his daughter, expecting the usual retreat most women made when learning he was a package deal, Emma's eyes instead lit up. "What's she like?" she asked eagerly. "Lily is everything," Marcus said simply. "Smart, stubborn, sensitive. She's had a tough time since her mother died." Emma reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Children are resilient, but they need to know it's okay to hurt sometimes. Does she have someone she can talk to about her feelings?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd provided Lily with everything material she could want, the best schools, extracurricular activities to keep her busy. But had he given her permission to grieve? "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I've tried to keep things normal." "Normal includes sadness," Emma said gently. "Maybe she needs to know your heart broke too." That night, Marcus sat on the edge of Lily's bed and, for the first time, told his daughter how much he missed her mother every day. The tears they shed together felt like the first real healing they'd experienced in years. The next morning, he called Emma. "Would you like to meet my daughter?" The day they spent at the park was the most perfect of Marcus's recent memory. Emma arrived with a backpack full of science experiments disguised as games. By afternoon, Lily was looking at her with something close to hero worship as they launched homemade rockets across the grass. "She's a natural teacher," Marcus told his housekeeper later, watching from the kitchen as Emma helped Lily with homework in the living room. "And you're in love with her," the older woman observed bluntly. Marcus couldn't deny it. But complications were mounting. He still hadn't told Emma about his true position or wealth. Each time he tried, the moment slipped away, his fear of changing what they had growing stronger. The deception became impossible to maintain when a business emergency required his attention during one of their dates. The call came as they walked through a neighborhood street fair, and Marcus stepped away to take it. "The board needs an immediate decision, Mr. Harrington," his assistant said urgently. Emma, standing close enough to overhear, froze at the name. Everyone in the city knew Harrington Enterprises and its famously private CEO. When Marcus returned, her expression had changed. "You're Marcus Harrington," she said flatly. "The Marcus Harrington." "Emma, I can explain. You've been lying to me for weeks." Her voice trembled. Was this some kind of experiment? Slumming with the poor girl to see how the other half lives? No. It wasn't like that at all. Marcus reached for her, but she stepped back. I trusted you. I told you everything about my life, my struggles, my dreams. And you couldn't even tell me your last name? Tears filled her eyes. I feel like such a fool. Please, just listen. But Emma was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd before he could explain that he'd been afraid that his wealth would create a barrier, afraid she would see him differently, afraid of losing the one person who made him feel like himself again. For days, Emma ignored his calls and texts. The pain of her absence was physical, a constant ache that affected his work, his sleep, his ability to focus on anything but her. Lily asked about her daily, adding to his sense of loss. After a week of silence, Marcus made a decision. If Emma wouldn't come to him, he would go to her world completely. He researched the learning center she dreamed of creating, drew up business plans, found potential locations. Not to buy her forgiveness, but to show her he had been listening, that her dreams mattered to him. He arrived at the diner where she worked the morning shift, taking a seat in her section. When she saw him, her professional smile faltered. "What can I get you?" she asked coldly. 5 minutes of your time, he said. After your shift. That's all I'm asking. Emma's jaw tightened, but she gave a curt nod. Those were the longest 3 hours of Marcus's life, watching her move efficiently between tables, her smile returning for everyone but him. When she finally slid into the booth across from him, still in her uniform, her exhaustion was evident. "I'm listening," she said. Marcus placed a folder on the table but didn't open it. "First, I need to apologize. You're right, I should have been honest from the beginning. For the first time since Caroline died, someone was seeing me, not my money or my company. It felt too precious to risk." Emma's expression softened slightly. "I understand being afraid of rejection, Marcus. But relationships need trust. I know. And I want to rebuild that trust, if you'll let me." He pushed the folder toward her. "This isn't a bribe. It's proof that I heard every word you said about your dreams." Cautiously, Emma opened the folder, her eyes widening as she scanned the detailed plans for a learning center in the city's poorest district. "This is," she whispered. "Your vision," Marcus finished. "I just put it on paper. The funding, the location, the staffing, it's all there. But Emma, it needs you to make it real. Your passion, your understanding of what these kids need." She looked up, tears in her eyes. "Why would you do this?" "Because I love you," he said simply. "And because you were right about Lily, about me, about everything. You've changed how I see the world. How I see myself as a father. I don't want to go back to life without you." Emma closed the folder, her hands trembling. "I need time, Marcus. This is overwhelming." He nodded, heart sinking. "I understand. But," she continued, meeting his gaze, "I missed you too. Both of you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The Learning Center opened 6 months later, with Emma as its director. Marcus provided the funding anonymously, insisting that his name appear nowhere in the materials. He wanted it to be her achievement, her dream realized. Their relationship rebuilt slowly, with complete honesty this time. Emma met his board members, attended company functions on his arm, unintimidated by the wealth surrounding her. She remained the same grounded, compassionate woman, now using her platform to advocate for educational equality. Lily blossomed under Emma's influence, her grief finally processed in healthy ways. The three of them created new traditions, new memories, a family forming from the fragments of their previous lives. A year after their first meeting, Marcus took Emma back to the restaurant where it all began. This time, she wore a new dress, bought with her director's salary. This time, there were no pretenses between them. "Do you remember what you said that night?" Marcus asked as they finished dessert. "That we didn't live in the same world?" Emma smiled. "I was wrong. We just needed to create our own." Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'd like to make that official." He slid a small velvet box toward her. "Not because of my world or yours, but because of the one we've built together." Emma opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside wasn't the ostentatious diamond she'd feared, but a simple emerald, the color of her eyes, set in a band engraved with the coordinates of the restaurant where they'd met. "Marcus," she breathed. "Lily and I both need you," he said softly. "Will you marry me, Emma? Not the CEO, not the wealthy man, just me, the father, the friend, the man who fell in love with you at first sight?" Emma's answer was in her kiss, in the tears that mingled between them, in the applause that erupted around them from other diners. Their wedding was an intimate affair in the garden of what would become their home, not Marcus's mansion, which held too many memories of his past life, but a new house they chose together. Lily served as both flower girl and ring bearer, beaming with joy as she gained the mother she'd been missing. Emma's learning center expanded to 3 locations across the city, changing thousands of lives. Marcus restructured his company's charitable foundation to focus on educational initiatives, creating pathways for underprivileged students to access opportunities they'd never dreamed possible. 2 years after their wedding, they welcomed twins, a boy and girl who would grow up understanding both privilege and responsibility, taught by parents who had learned that true wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Emma and Marcus would sit on their porch swing, marveling at the journey that had brought them together. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus would ask. "Marrying into all this complexity?" And Emma would always answer the same way, "I didn't marry your complexity. I married your heart. The rest is just details." Their story became legend in their circle, the CEO who went on a blind date for a friend and found his soulmate in a woman from a different world. A reminder that love sees beyond circumstances, beyond bank accounts, beyond the barriers we create. A reminder that sometimes, the wrong date can lead to exactly the right life. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and second chances, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us all that true connection transcends social boundaries. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with a simple case of mistaken identity, and end with 2 worlds becoming one.